Awesome.
Thank you.
You're all
Tristan.
good?
Yeah, we're
Thank
good.
you, because I thought it was already recording. Excellent. Okay. Should we give just,
Hi, Lindsay.
that was actually quite a
Me
quick
too.
preview.
I'm Lindsay, by the way.
Hey, Michael Diaz-Rivera.
Nice to meet you. I'll be taking notes, y'all, but I'll
Share my screen. No, it looks like.
Mickey's a great expert, so this will be good.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I shared my entire screen. Let me see, can you guys? Can you see me shifting between two?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, hold about my business.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you.
Oh, cool, very cool.
Hi there.
Hi.
Please grab a copy of each. And for those folks who are online, we will be giving you links when it's relevant in the presentation, so you can access a couple things.
Mickey, it is not sharing. Oh. it's-
Yeah, it kind of changed the way it was doing earlier. Is it sharing? What is it sharing?
If you look right here.
You're seeing that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's weird. Let me just. Let me see, just one sec. We're actually, the movement back and forth didn't take that long. That's good, great. Okay, your screen sharing, please move this window. I'm gonna stop sharing and reshare. That the heat, I ate something that was hot and I'm like still.
Yeah, did y'all
sniffling
have
from
some
it.
food?
Yeah,
It was really good.
And
I
where
have-
did it come from?
It was one of the founding members of Good Business Colorado. I can't think of the name. But I had breakfast, like I had a work breakfast like 2 hours
What are you
ago.
seeing now?
But I'm like, I still want to eat it. So I'm just,
Yeah, you're seeing that version of it, but I don't know why it's.
Here, let me try.
Let me see, I think I can just go like this. Wait, no. It was earlier, it was not showing like this, so you know how it's so crazy, like you can get it all set up perfectly and then it doesn't. But I think.
Yeah.
I do that, okay. Well,
Yeah,
now
that's
it's
perfect.
swapped, look, well, whatever. You guys
It
will
works,
see.
yeah.
You guys will see slightly, there's a few notes that you guys will see, so. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. So we are talking about business planning for existing businesses. And again, hopefully it'll be relevant no matter what stage you're in. So let me hide this. So I think just a quick starting with kind of why are you business planning? I think it's very easy to think of business planning as a requirement somebody's asking you to do. And I really want to try to help shift that because I think it should be something that's really going to help you in your business. First and foremost, the purpose of it is to ensure a consistent, viable strategy. So make sure everything kind of hangs together the way it's supposed to. It also should be giving you a roadmap. So and not only setting a roadmap for yourself, but how do you communicate what that roadmap is to others? And that means really what the roadmap piece means is having milestones, having some goals and milestones and activities associated with those milestones. It should help you hone ideas and focus. I think this is something I see with a lot of business plans that are out there. Samples, they feel very generic and kind of could apply to anybody. And that's not helpful. That's not helpful for me understanding your business, but it's especially not helpful for you. That's where you can kind of tell it's like a check the box. You also don't want it to be like if your marketing strategy is all the different marketing avenues that are out there, that's not feasible as a small business. Maybe it is if you're a large business that has a lot of huge department, but for you, it should not, simple is better in this case. So it should be, what is your priorities? Not all the things I could think of that I can do. What are your priorities? And it ultimately should be helping you with critical decisions because you know what your strategy is. And it may mean you're changing them, but if you change them, you realize, okay, I was competing on price, but now I want to buy a really high quality material that doesn't fit together. So I need to have to go back and reevaluate. So I'm either going to not do that, or I'm going to go back and reevaluate. And this is a key one that I think this aligned stakeholder, sorry, I'm pointing at the screen for people that probably isn't helpful. I'll try to use my mouse. So aligned Align stakeholders, I think, is an area where we don't really think about that, the purpose of a business plan. This can be, and this is where we're going to get into a little bit of what format you can use. But a business plan can be a great tool to give to your staff to help them understand what the business is. So a new potential like senior hire that you want to get, a community partner. If it's in something that you feel good about and is really representative about your business, it's actually a great tool for that. And then this last one is attract vet investors or secure funding. That's the one we kind of all think about. But I do want to say what I am not going to focus on, I'll mention this a couple times, is really the attract investors. I think that's a little bit different of a type of business plan. I'll kind of get into that a little bit. So as an existing business, why are you doing it now? So there's a lot of reasons. Maybe you're just doing you're at a place where you want to do some strategic planning and kind of think about how you're going to sustain or improve your business. You could be needing to pivot to thrive. You want to be more successful, or maybe even just to survive. You're kind of at that stage right now with it, especially in this economic environment, that you just really need to figure out if can you make this work, or you're ready for growth. And when I say growth, I am not talking about those huge, like big expansions. I think that's a different type of. This is not, hopefully these tools would still be useful, but that's not who I'm kind of gearing this for. I'm thinking about, I'll give examples. I'll probably give a lot of food examples because that's an easy one to like, everybody kind of has some, can grasp that. But a larger related venture, it might mean moving from a food truck to a restaurant. Replication could be opening a second restaurant. A new adjacent business, maybe you're a coffee shop, but now you want to actually offer a hot meal. Or you're a service industry, you offer a specific service and you want to offer a new service that's related, but has some meaningful differences. So what I'm going to go through today, these are all different reasons. Hopefully the tool, what we're going to look at today, is going to be relevant no matter what stage, whatever reason you have for business planning. So kind of related to all this is, who are you making this business plan for? So again, potential investors is probably the one people often make it for. This is not, I will say, if you want to growing big and you need big investors, you're going to want to do a pretty comprehensive traditional business plan that's polished and all of those. That's not what we're focusing on. Lenders, which is where I work, we also accept a business plan in a few different forms, as long we're really looking either, I'll be honest, either as a lender, it's just a check the box requirement, or what we're really caring about, hopefully, generally, is not so much like, how does it look and all of those things, but do you know what you're doing? Does your plan make sense and does it hang together? Potential new staff again, and your current staff. And that is, well, we'll get into format because those can also inform some of your format. But no matter what, I think no matter what you do, it's essential that it helps you. And it's essential that it comes from you. You can have somebody else help you on your business plan. If you're going to go here, for example, to the investors, you can even hire someone to write out in nice, pretty prose if that's what you want. But the meat of the plan needs to come from you. You might get an expert in marketing, because I'm not an expert in marketing, and they'll help you work through it. But you are ultimately the one that needs to decide what are the priorities and make sure you thoroughly understand. They might, again, make a lot of suggestions and kind of flesh it out for you, but the ultimate thing needs to come from you. And if it's not helping you, you're wasting your time. So that's kind of the one thing I want to hopefully, I think it's very easy for a lot of business planning stuff to feel like an exercise, just an exercise that you're doing for somebody else. And I don't want that to be the case for you. Okay. So what do we mean by business plan? So I first want to say there's a difference between business planning and business plan. I'm more focused on the business planning part. And that's the piece that I think when people say it's essential that you have a plan, that's hopefully what they mean. The business plan, which often people throw around business plan. They don't always mean like the format with the executive summary and then the marketing and the strategy and all of those sections, but usually that's what they mean. They don't always mean that. So like when we say it's a lender business plan, we don't need it to be just like that. And a lot of like lenders may not require that. Some other places may not require it, but that is, and I'm talking a bit more about the business planning. The nice thing about the formal business plan is it does include both strategic planning and operational planning if you're doing it well and writing it comprehensively. And I do think you do need both of those. So like if again, as a lender, if you're submitting something that's kind of in your own style, your own format, I would be looking that you have a big picture strategy, again, that all kind of fits together, and you have an operational plan. I will also say that as a lender and as a small business, you look at some of the stuff out there for your business plan templates, you can find plenty of business plan templates that do not even have an operations section. As a small business owner, you are setting yourself up for failure if you do not do that. And as a lender, looking at just, strategy is important if you're going to try to grow to, $10 million in revenue next year. Yes, you need a great strategy. For us, you do need a strategy that makes sense, but it doesn't have to be like world-changing strategy. It can be kind of a strategy that's fairly typical amongst good small businesses, but you do need an operations. We ask, as a lender, the two areas we care about the most are your sales and marketing and your operations. And I do think that so much of the resources out there, for investors or for business planning are really geared towards people looking at those investor classes. And so they really emphasize strategy and really de-emphasize operations. And I think all of you probably know, as an actual small business owner, operations is actually getting your sales and your marketing right, and then operations. Those are the two things that can be the death of you. And yeah, operations is easy if you have millions of dollars to hire a specific HR person who has expertise in that, a specific facility maintenance person. But when you're when you're a small organization, operations is like, not a single piece of it is rocket science, right? But when you need to figure out 5 different things that you've never done before, it can really trip you up. So that's where I do think the operational planning is really key. Format. I think you should go for a format. There's a million different formats. Go for a format that makes sense to you. I'm going to introduce one, at least from a model perspective, but it may work for you, it may not. Find something that works for you, as long as it covers like the basics, which I think we'll go over. Again, the one exception of that is like an investor, if your audience is investors. Okay, how thorough should you be? There's different schools of thought versus like a lean startup. It basically says do not spend a ton of time doing a super comprehensive business plan, versus like kind of the failure to plan is planning to fail mentality. I probably, to be honest with you, lean towards the lean startup. If you've ever heard of it, have you guys heard of the idea of minimally viable product? So that's, it's a tech term, but it doesn't have to apply to a tech. It could be anything. It could be literally trying out this is going to be one of my feature elements on my menu. I want to make sure I'm testing it out with people. So that it could be, I think it's really important to try things and not over plan. But I think the huge caveat is, how big a leap are you making? So that lends itself well to taking step by step, right? If you're going all the way, though, I have a small catering business that I do on the side, and now I'm trying to open a restaurant, you better have a pretty thorough plan and really think through a lot of things, because that's a huge leap. So if you're more in I want to test things out and take then that's fine. You can take small steps at a time and not necessarily have like the full comprehensive, I have a plan for everything. But no matter what, even if you're in the lean startup idea, that doesn't mean you don't have the things written down and you still should be committing to paper the core components of your business model. And that's really important because startups change, like not startups, existing businesses, anything when you're making changes, you're gonna change. Especially if you're in the more of the expansion, like I'm trying something new, it's going to change, but you want to be thoughtful about what you change. And if you have it on paper, you know that you've at least thought it through, and then when things change, you're able to make those adjustments in a purposeful way versus just being yanked from one thing to the other. You're actually making deliberate changes. You should also have basic, so those are the core components of your business model. So what is your basic strategy and basic approach? And then some milestones and activities, absolutely. So these are kind of the absolute minimums, no matter what school you're in. And then you update as necessary. Should be ideally, and this is why I don't necessarily like the super formal business plans. Those are hard to change and update. This should be something that can be a living document. Okay, so this is the model we're going to use for today. It's called a business model canvas. I'm not going to go in through it detail right now. I'm going to kind of give a bigger picture overview, and then we'll get into it a little bit. So it starts within the middle. What's your value proposition or value propositions? That ties to this customer segments. Those are usually the two places you are supposed to start. What are your customer segments, and what are you offering them as your benefits? And each value proposition you might have, it could be tied to the different segments, that you have different propositions to your different segments. And this whole side on the right is all about your sales and marketing. So you see kind of, that's the side, your marketing and sales on the right, built on a foundation of your profitability, cost and revenue. And then on the left is more of your operational side of things. Again, we're going to get into a little bit more detail through an example soon. So this is a flourishing business canvas. I wanted to introduce this, especially because of the audience of Good Business Colorado being a values-driven businesses. We're not going to use this today, although I did incorporate a little bit of it, but I'll have a link at we'll email this out to you. It's very complex. That's why we're not going to use it today. But there's a video that kind of explains it. And at least and again, this is like, I made a couple adjustments to the standard model, make adjustments as you see fit. So this is about assuming you're a business that has more than just profit as your motivation. And so they've added, so one of the great things that I've actually incorporated into the one we're going to go through is goals. What are your goals? That's your foundation of your outcomes. You have your costs and your revenues. What are your goals? And then they also, instead of the right-hand side, is broader stakeholders, which I really like. So what are your staff thinking about? What are you offering to your, not just your customers, but to your other stakeholders? Again, this is more just an introduction so you can kind of see this, but we're not going to use this specifically. Going back to the more standard one, I liked this. This is from Gary Fox. I don't know what it is, but I liked this framework of how he separated this out. So that left-hand side, that right-hand side, which I said was the sales and marketability, is how desirable is your product and how do you build that desirability? Here is the operations process side. Is it feasible to create that? And then if you combine making it desirable and making it feasible, that relies on a foundation of viability, which is your profit basically. So and the key piece of this model is that everything needs to link together. And that's where it becomes really helpful. When I first saw this, I was like, yeah, it seems like kind of, I don't know, it just seemed like a little bit simple. But when you actually get into it and start thinking through it and see that, make sure it's a very good visualization, and it's a great thing to share. Easier to share something like this with your staff, for example, or a community partner, than a full-fledged business plan that they're not going to read. But yeah, when you start seeing this, you can really get into how they all link together. Okay, so yep, I have a question.
It all needs to be linked. Is there a certain box that we should start with?
Yes, so, and we're going to get there, but yeah, generally you start with, and it kind of go back and forth, the customer segments and the value propositions. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like you start with on the other side, you don't start at the beginning, but yes, that's a very good question. Because that's kind of what everything else, what your value proposition and who your customers are, those have to make sense, and then everything flows from there. Now, this is a business model, not a business plan. So this is much more on the strategic planning side, less on the operational side. What I've put here is if you were to give me this as a business model, I mean, as your business plan, as a lender, I'd probably be like, I need a little bit more. But I think you don't necessarily need a lot more. And this is where I think any business model to business plan, I think if you add these two things, you're at least at a minimum, which would be financial projections with detailed assumptions. That again, it has to match. It should kind of all fit together, but that's an absolute for a full business plan you really need, especially if you're looking for money. Financial projections. We help people do this. This is my favorite thing to help people with. I will never do this for you. I will help you think through. I will create a template and make the assumptions, but not make the assumptions. I will help make sure that the assumptions you make and change drive through the model. But we're gonna talk through what are your assumptions, what are the drivers of your sales and then your costs. So that's number one. And then I think the second thing, which literally could just be a page after this, or what are your milestones and action steps, high level action steps. It doesn't need to be super detailed. Depends on whether I'm not a super planner. That's not my strength. I'm much more the like figure it out as you go. If you are a super planner, maybe super detailed, but for me, it's still, you still need some stakes in the ground, some milestones as guideposts, and some basic level action steps for your key success factors. And I would very much encourage you not to overlook the operations piece as a small business. So maybe you're going to have to figure out, if you're a restaurant, how am I going to actually manage my kitchen and all of those things. Okay, and then this is ideally a business plan would include this third, but it's not quite as absolutely essential. Research and specific details for core marketing and operating assumptions and functions. And I put research with a beaker intentionally because I think we often think research is, and there's a fantastic, the Denver Public Library is a fantastic resource for market research and competitor research. That's only one type of, and I absolutely recommend you use it. And these links will be in the packet in your folder, as well as Denver Public Library is not in this presentation, it's in the other one. But
great.
But yes, but this also means, again, like if you already have a customer base and you're starting to think about expanding, survey them, talk to them, do a focus group with your current survey, with your current customers, to test out your menu if you're opening up your catering business or whatever. So it can mean go out. A huge way to get research is go out to talk to current business owners doing what you do. And usually people are, if you find somebody who's not your direct competitor, usually they'll be pretty helpful. And again, specificity is really important. Okay, so what we're going to do this in an example. Probably I had hoped to get to giving you some time to do it yourself, but I think we'll probably end up just going through the example. And what we're going to do and I think this is what I really recommend you doing, is your current state. We're going to put one together in a current state, and then what is your target? And that can really help you see what your gaps are, where you're like, oh, I have these wonderful strengths that I can build that's going to help me be successful. Oh, this thing that is necessary, but this thing that's necessary for me to be successful in this new version is I'm missing. It's just different. It's just not required for where I am. So that's where I think this is really helpful as an existing business. So my example, I've totally made up a business. I'm also not even though I keep mentioning food, I am not an expert in the food industry. So apologize if some of this, hopefully it makes sense, but yeah, so what we're going to do is look at this. It's just this kind of scenario I'm assuming is it's a food stall in like Edgewater Public Market, which is just a public our town food hall, looking to move and expand into a standalone sit-down restaurant. And so I did make some adjustments. Let me see, actually I already have it open, so that did it. Okay. I did make a couple of, to the 2 adjustments I made to the standard model is I added goals because I really liked that. I think that's a great one for, I also switched key activities and key partners, just because again, emphasizing how important I think operations are. I wanted to give space for you to really think through all the key activities of operations, but this is the one that you have is standard. So I will share with you in the template that I gave, I did not switch because you can just rewrite the titles there, but I did add goals. You'll have a link to this if you've ever used Miro.
We're not seeing.
Oh, you're not seeing? How did that? See, I did this exactly so that you could see it.
Here, we're seeing it on here,
Okay.
so I'll just share my screen. You continue on.
I made
This is
sure
the-
this was,
This is, where is that? This is the example of Taste of Portugal.
I really made. I
And then
didn't
this
really
is the
just-
example template, that will share the link for all the chats and all the links in the chat and links to both of these.
Let me just see if it's. Yes, for some reason it changed this. Let me just, you'll actually see it in just a sec. I did that before. I don't know why it just, okay. cool.
Yeah, now we're in action.
So. And you said you guys are still seeing it, right?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
seeing it on there and then we're seeing it on. Zoom.
Okay, so. So just to base, I'm not going to go through all of this in total detail, but you will have this as well as you have it as a printout. So the folks who are online, I think Lindsay put the links in the chat. So, and this is made up, so hopefully it makes sense. And this is a successful business, right? So it's kind of who's their customer segments, professionals who live in and around Edgewater and appreciate quality, convenience, and variety in their meals. Generally are single or married with no kids. You could get even more specific, but it should be pretty specific, especially if you're a small business, not like with a huge reach. And then also just folks who go there, young professionals from across Denver, out for a relaxed social evening, right, in a nice environment. So then their values, and you can hopefully see these connect. They provide delicious, distinctive food with high quality meat and vegetarian options at an affordable mid-price point. They have fewer menu options with a focus on quality, while still meeting different dietary needs, and in an inviting social environment that offers groups, convenience, and and flexibility. So I just read those just because, again, those are kind of the core. But the customer relationships, what you're here is like, how are you actually building relationships, or what are your interactions with customers? So one of the keys here that I want to show is they have a low touch overall, right? They have primarily walk-in, walk-by traffic. They don't have a huge marketing presence because they don't need it. They just get the walk-in. The Edgewater Public Market does that for them, right? And they offer a quality product, so people enjoy it. It's popular, but they don't have to do a ton of active outreach. So they're low touch. They don't really do follow-ups and online presence. And they don't really do, they just mostly just benefit from walk-in. Now that becomes really important over here is when they think about a standalone. First of all, they're gonna have to really think through their customer segments, because that's not those customer segments don't automatically translate here. So how do they, what is that? So I put here as questions. So I think the first step here is, what are you losing, and what are you able to maintain from what you have, but also what do you have to figure out? So when you ultimately, what this is doing is it's showing, okay, I actually have to figure this out. I don't know yet. And then once I figure it out, I have to make a map. It will also show you then, what do I really need to think through as my next steps of like, okay, I have to make a plan to reach those customers.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Is the difference in color of the sticky notes between the ones you have to figure out and the ones you have?
It's mostly things I wanted to highlight.
Oh,
Yeah. So I just put pink on this. There's no super rhyme. These were all pink except for the ones I wanted to highlight, so you could see.
okay.
And then on this side, it is, just yellow except for ones to highlight. So, because they're not going to have the same walk-in traffic. They probably all have a greater reliance on delivery apps. So this is like a huge, like, okay, now I just know that's one of the huge things I'm gonna have to figure out, right? And so now my planning focuses on that. And ultimately, this is not your full state target version. This is more of just what you're kind of helping you identify. This helps you identify, this is a tool I know people have used when they're considering different options, right? That can help you evaluate. You can see, oh, this option I'm pretty far away from. This option actually really builds on my strengths. We at 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple other quick things that I wanted to point out here is, so I want to actually show, so these are all like they're different partners and activities, but here's some new new operations, going back to operations. They may have to do some renovations. Do you have any expertise in doing renovations? No, but then you have to maintain your own facility. I don't know that. I don't have to worry about that now, right? So again, this is highlighting things that are things you're going to have to focus on and figure out. On the revenue side, well, customers pay. Okay, I'll have alcohol. That's a good addition, which then ties to the liquor license that I have to get, right? But overall, there's actually a lot of added costs. Can I charge a higher price point? I don't know. Again, highlighting things. So basically, the first step here is highlighting the key questions you're going to have to address, figure out, and then once you figure those out, then you map out what's your process to get from where you are today to where you need to be. So for example, maybe I decide here, I wanted to move in 6 months into my new restaurant. I realized I'm actually going to spend the next 6 months just building a marketing online presence and building a loyal customer base, and then start looking for a new spot. So very quickly going back to here, so you start with your customer segments and value proposition. You want to make sure they're specific and fit together. There's links to both the PDF template that you can fill in, which is a little bit easier to work with, but not as flexible, or the Miro template. If you've never used Miro, it can be a little bit tricky, but it's a good tool for this. And on the back of the sheet, including this link of the fillable PDF, are just questions that kind of try to define those categories, those boxes. And then here's a few other resources. A couple things I just wanted to, these first two are more if you really want to need help on the full. Actually, LivePlan has a pretty good executive summary type version of this, and I think they actually may even use this, something similar to this. So LivePlan is both, can do both. There is a cost, but you can do a full business plan or a simpler one. We actually have some licenses that I can let you use for 3 to 6 months. If you reach out to me, my email is in the, I'll make sure my email is in this presentation. But yeah, and SCORE is great for comprehensive business planning. Aurora's SBDC has a leading edge program that is actually 4 sessions creating this for your business. And then here's just a few articles. One thing I will say, again, so much business planning is geared towards bigger business. So there's some great examples out there, but almost all of them are like Netflix and Amazon and stuff, which isn't that helpful for you. So this was one of the only good, there's a YouTube that I thought was a pretty good example of a small business that walks through all of them. And that's probably one of the only ones I found that was a good small business. And then there's a YouTube about the Flourishing Business Canvas. So that was a little more talking and less working than I hoped, but I think we have like 1 minute for questions if anybody has any. Probably have a lot, but and I'll be here if you want to. And I'm also available actually for anybody on online. My email will be, I'll put my email on this page, and you will get this email, and you can feel free to reach out to me and we can work on one together if you'd like. Is again, like, this is this is not a rocket science framework, right? But once you start to get into it and really think through it, and again, try not to throw everything at the wall, try to actually be prioritized. That's sometimes the hardest part. And be as specific as possible. It should be not super generic, like super specific with your customer segments. Maybe not super specific, but fairly specific. Specific on what channels, marketing channels you're using. Channels, does anybody You want me to define what channels means?
That is actually, I was gonna ask about that, so yes, please.
Yeah, it just means how are you reaching your customers? So in this case, it would be like walk-in, online ordering and Uber Eats.
Thank you. So if my
are you
customers
selling?
are both the store and the consumer.
Those are both be
should
channels.
I-
So
okay.
you probably want yours to be two distinct customer segments. And you could even do one of each. I mean, ideally, they all fit in. The nice thing about Miro is you can make it bigger and bigger. It doesn't print very well, but as you can see, it's very small, but you can make it bigger and bigger. And so I would do each of those segments and think about what's your value proposition and what are your exact, you may have like direct, so for the stores, you're just doing direct sales, right? Possibly. For the customers, you might have like online, you may have different things, different ways you're reaching them and selling to them.
Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like the others, hopefully, the questions on the back, I don't love, these were not mine. They're fairly standard descriptions of these categories. I don't love them, but the one other thing, key partners is not just, I just like partners. What does that mean for your, it can include, it should include your vendors, your suppliers. I put staff here. You could put staff as a stakeholder if you did that, but I put staff here. But really like your suppliers and then any other, it may be community partners, it may be others, but it's, that's one that
What if you don't really have key partners?
it's fine, leave it blank. That's why I switched key partners and key activities, because I was like, this is a lot of space for key partners. But it may be people who help sell, like whatever.
Photographer, so.
Does anybody help you get the word? Do you have any avenues that you kind of advertise yourself through or no?
No, just a lot of networking.
Yep. So then maybe you don't have any.
Okay,
That's fine.
because I put networking under channels.
Yeah, that's good. Yep, that's fine. Yeah, and again, like I think these are, I think we should be back in the main room, shouldn't we?
We have 3 more minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so make this work for you. I mean, there is some research, I'm assuming, behind this, because this is very like widely used and like people don't, for some reason, there's not very many. I thought there'd be lots of different versions of it. There's not that many. I took the liberty to make an adjustment that I thought made sense to me, which is again with adding the goals and switching the activities and partners. So make things that work for you. Like if it doesn't, if you're like, I don't know if I should put it in this column or this column, what makes sense to you is fine. And again, if you find a different framework that you like, but this nice thing about this is this should really give you, this is not the full business plan, but this is the bulk of the thinking behind the business plan. And then the rest is like fleshing, just kind of at least tells you where to focus your planning, right? And then, yeah, and so I think this can be, and I do think that current versus where you want to go. I really think you should start with current. People will say their current model and they'll put like what they kind of wish they were, but they won't be honest about it. Because that's how what's going to.
Okay. Are we all together now?
We're good to go? Okay. Everyone can hear me okay? Okay. Well, thank you back. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Welcome back. We're going to close in our breakout sessions just for the keys of logistics here. First, for the people joining us via Zoom, we just put in the chat the link to our event survey. And for everybody here in the physical space, you have a survey in your packet, or you can use that QR code as well. We really appreciate all of your feedback to help us provide and improve our future programming. So please take 2 minutes to fill that out and share your input. And also, if you found value in today's event, we hope you consider making a donation to support the Lunch and Learn series. There have been 10 of these over the course of the past several months, taking a lot of work and energy and effort. So we appreciate any kind of donation that you could. And you'll also find information on how to donate in your packet as well. And we want to take a minute to encourage you to review the resources that are included in the packets, as well as in the online resource library. And you'll receive an email after today with information on all of the tracks.
And if you did not register on Eventbrite, you'll want access to the recording from the session and the compilation of resources for this and other events. Please make sure you signed up on the sign-in sheets we've passed around. All right, for those of you joining us in person, we invite you to stay to come back to our main space at the community event space where we are right here with the startup group and network and eat more food. Please use the next half hour to get your individual questions answered or just to network with the people you are. For those of you joining virtually, thank you for being here with us today and participating in this way. Thank you again. We hope you got some really good nuggets from today and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.